Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be a book tag, specifically the end of the year book tag. I want to get this done before the last month of the year, so let's get into the very few questions of this tag. Question number 1, are there any books that you started out this year but you need to finish? I think for this question, the most important book that I started but have just left on the wayside completely, not even looking at it anymore, is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now this is about a man named Victor and his friend Eli, and they do a bunch of experiments while in university and they end up with some sort of superpower. However, these two men are no longer friends and now enemies, and Victor wants revenge. Now, I like the concept of this book, I like the characters in this book, but it focuses on two pet peeves of mine. One, I do not handle betrayal well. Like, I get so infuriated when people betray other people, especially if they're said to be great friends, and even more, I hate when other people claim another's work as their own. Like, be smart enough by yourself, stop stealing other people's work. So those are two pet peeves, and another major one that I also figure I might as well mention is my bookish pet peeve of books that hint heavily on what is to happen in the book. So very obvious foreshadowing to the point in which it's irritating to me because it's leaving me in suspense. So like this book, it starts off where it's like, oh, Victor's been betrayed by his friend, it's all gonna be terrible, Victor wants revenge, but then you slowly want to walk me through the backstory of what horrible thing happened that he got betrayed. So I'm like in suspense because I'm like, okay, just show me what terrible thing this kid did so that I can know and we can move on to the actual revenge bit. But it's like going from the present to the past, and it's just being overly suspenseful, and it's not telling you but really hinting really hard, and my little Puerto Rican mind is like thinking of the worst possible scenario, and I just want what's going to happen instead of it being the dun 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 and me having to wait for the next 100 pages for you finally to do that thing. Don't like tantalize me with something terrible. Just do the terrible thing already. I don't have any time to play your dumb games. So this is the first V.E. Schwab book that I've picked up. I have heard it's really good, but because of the things that kind of pet peevey to me, I DNF'd it. I don't want to just give it away and stop this book. I think it's worth my time, but I know I need to push through it because it has so many things that I'm not a fan of, if that makes sense. The next question on this list is, do you have an autumn book for the end of the year? And so I'm assuming this is like books that you think of as autumn-ish. So for that, I'm going to have to go with Tender Morsels by Margot Langong. I think that's how you say it. And this one is like a fairy tale type book, but more of the grim fairy tale style, where there is a mother and her daughters and they live in this like heaven, but then they get attacked by bear men and now their heaven has been destroyed. And if you can tell from the cover, it's just like a brown color, brown heavy, and there's like vines coming off her dress and there's like dead trees in the background, and that just gives me a real autumn feel with like all the browns and like the dead things. Question number 3, is there a new release that you're really looking forward to that has yet to come out? And that I'm going to have to go with Witchwood by Tahereh Mafi. I recently read Furthermore. It's over here on my shelf, and I really loved it. I know there's only so comments about it, and some people really were okay with it and some people absolutely loved it. I was one of those people who absolutely loved it. I found it intriguing. It was my first Tahereh Mafi book because I'm not really one for stories like Shatter Me. It may be good, but I'm really hesitant to start that. So I was really surprised. I really love the writing style, and I'm really excited to read another one of her books. Question number 4, books that you want to read before the years. And for this, I'm going to have to go with This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab and Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. So this is a duology, and it is about a world in which bad actions create monsters, literal human monsters, and there's also the juxtapose of humans just doing monstrous things. So we have two characters. One is a human who is monstrous, and one is a monster who isn't as monstrous, I guess. I'm not quite sure. That's what I've kind of picked up here and there from hearing about it. I've heard good things about this. I have the complete series, so I want to start it. I think the premise seems really exciting, so I know I'll probably have a good time with it, and I just want to read it so that I can at least say, oh yes, I've read a whole Victoria Schwab book, and stop being a lamehead and just DNFing books because they make me slightly uncomfortable. Question number 5, a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite. Now, I'm not quite sure about favorite because that's really like a hard word like to say. I like a lot of books. I think a lot of books are great, but I'm kind of hesitant in like saying this is my favorite book and I would constantly brag about this book. However, The Female Species by Mindy McGinnis is probably the closest one I can think of that I might read it and like fall absolutely in love with it and try to recommend everyone read it. If I remember correctly, it's a premise about a girl whose sister is murdered and she wants revenge. I really like revenge stories, and this seems interesting enough that I might fall in love with it if it has some sort of philosophy, struggle, mental struggle sort of thriller thing to it. Because I tend to love those books the best. It's either that or superhero books. So I read most all superhero books on my shelf, so this is the only one I got left. Last question of this tag is, have you started making any reading plans for 2018? And at the moment, my only goal and New Year's resolution when it comes to reading in 2018 is to have a whole bookcase filled with nothing but books that I've already read. And so that means that I actually have to read my bookcase TBR and not just stare at them because they're pretty to look at. I might end up cheating because I know myself, and I might just like rearrange my bookshelf so that the books that I've already read are on one bookshelf instead of leaving it aesthetically pleasing looking where they just look nice. But I'm not quite sure if my aesthetic brain can let it go. I might cheat myself just so that I can say I accomplished the goal. Otherwise, I'm gonna go shelf by shelf and try to read as many books as possible so that I can have one complete bookcase that is completely read. This is the end of this tag. Comment down below if you are a seasonal reader. I've heard that often on BookTube, where people read certain books in certain seasons, or they feel more like certain books in certain seasons. And I'm not really that type of reader, so I don't often have books that I dedicate, oh, this is a autumn reader, this is a winter reader, this is a spring reader, this is a summer read. I just read books when like I look at it and I feel like it's calling to me. So are you one of those seasonal readers, and is it just like a feeling you get, or is it based on like covers that you decide which season, or is it based on content? I'm not quite sure. I find it really interesting to see like what other people do when it comes to their reading habits. So I'm really curious. If you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.